Stephanie asked if I could do that. Donahue. So, hi, Stephanie Donahue. We are now recording. Okay, so let's talk about purpose. We think this is a very exciting topic. I wonder if now that we're in COVID, if you've heard a little bit more about purpose. I feel like I hear about it all the time. But this curriculum was actually developed in part with a man named Richard Leider, and he is an author and an incredible speaker on purpose. And he wrote this, he's written like 10 books, but so he actually put together this curriculum that we follow. But I think it's interesting to start by asking you, what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? What would you say to that? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
This guy. Coincidental timing. This guy.
Yeah. Besides the dog, or well, I got to help my kids get out the door, whatever it is. You know, the CDC actually reported that only 21% of people have a clear sense of purpose in their life. I mean, think about that. Only 21% of adults. That means 80% out there have no clue, no clue what we're doing. So let me start my PowerPoint here. Let me share my screen. That'll help us follow along here. All right. Can you guys see this? Good. All right. So here we go. So tonight we're going to look at what purpose is, what the experts have to say about it. We're going to go through a quick activity, and you're going to leave tonight with your personal purpose statement, at least a draft. Okay. All right. So why is this whole concept of purpose important? I mean, if you think about it, it is like that big life question everybody asks. Why am I here? What's the meaning to life? You know, how do I fit into this bigger sense of the world? So I think it's really been an ongoing question that people over time have always been interested in and want to figure out how their life matters. So we're going to look at some of what the experts say about purpose. And I mentioned Richard Leider, and he actually did quite a bit of research outside of authoring 10 books. He talked to people and in their 80s and early 90s, and asked them this question. He asked them, if you could do your life over again, what would you do differently? And I'm curious to know how you think people may have responded to that question. Think about someone in their 80s, late 80s, early 90s. If you could live your life over again, what would you do differently? What do you think they said?
I mean, she's not an older woman, but Shonda Rhimes had that book about saying yes more. So I would think just saying yes to things more.
Very good. Yes. Missy, anything you want to add? To answer that question?
Sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute.
Yeah, you're fine.
I think maybe work less, try to focus less on making money, but spending more time with their family and more, really engaging more with family instead of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So he took all of those answers and he pretty much was able to drop them into 3 different buckets. One of those buckets was people said they would have pressed the pause button more frequently, that they would have stopped and enjoyed being in the moment, right? And been more reflective instead of just moving from, you know, work to home task, back to work, right? So they would have taken time to enjoy the moments more. Secondly, and back to your point, Erica, you know, they said, I would have taken more risks. I would have gone after those dreams. I would have, you know, not held anything back. So I would have been more courageous. And finally, they actually articulated, I wish I knew my purpose sooner in life. as you age and you're able to look back, I think we can look at our experiences and start to see some common threads of what we're good at, where we really enjoy doing certain tasks. And you're like, oh gosh, I was really built to be this. Some people always know that they were meant to be in the healthcare profession, or knew from day one they wanted to help other people learn. They wanted to be a teacher. But sometimes it takes that reflection of looking back over your experiences to understand what it is that you're good at. So it's great that we want to look at purpose earlier in our life. Okay, so let's think about someone in your life that you would say to yourself, that person has a purpose. They clearly know what their purpose is. And then I want to know, I don't need to know who it is, but I want to know why you say that. So what are those characteristics of a person that is living their life with purpose? And I'm thinking of someone in Corey right now, because I was in a meeting with her this afternoon, and you guys may know Betsy Grinder. But Betsy, to me, she absolutely knows her purpose. And she's, to me, very energetic. She's focused. She's got all this energy, and she's thinking about bigger things than just how's this going to benefit me. She's thinking kind of outward, like how can what I do help somebody else? So this generous spirit, I think. But I want to hear what you have to say about somebody that you think lives a life with purpose, and what is that characteristic that makes you think that?
For me, that person just, I don't know, like all the decisions he makes seems to be for this one goal, like be it school, be it what he does in his free time, or for work, like it's all with that one goal in mind.
Yeah, good. So focused again, they understand, kind of working towards this thing. Yeah. Missy, what about you?
I would say joy. This person I know has a lot of joy and kind of brings it her I wouldn't say her calm because she's not calm, but she has a joy that she brings.
Right, right. And I think about other people that I know, and I would say the same thing. They have this, they're just happy. They just, I mean, sure, I know they get stressed, but they don't dwell on that. It's like they have this, yeah, I get what you're saying. If you're following along in your workbook on page 2, we want to define what purpose really is. And so they kind of have some blanks there, and I'm just going to read the sentence. But basically, purpose is the inward intent that drives our outward actions. So we like to say that purpose is really kind of from the inside out. And when we think about that, we talk about being in alignment, right? So having our thoughts and our heart and our actions all in alignment. And we know, like with our car, when we're out of alignment, we feel off. We just feel, life's a little bumpy. We're not on track. But when what you're thinking, feeling, and doing is all in alignment, you're doing things with a purpose. So just something to think about. So what's the point? We talked about people over time have always wanted to be able to answer those big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? How does my life matter? So that's really what purpose is all about. And we know that just through the examples that you guys shared, people that have that clear sense of purpose really see that bigger picture, and they live with a sense of joy, with a happiness and a level of energy that really correlates to your own personal health and well-being. So that's really kind of what we want to move into now, is talking about not just why purpose is important, but how it impacts your physical health. So this is Viktor Frankl. Viktor is no longer with us, but he was an author of one of the greatest books of all times, Man's Search for Meaning. Victor was also a psychiatrist, and he lived in the concentration camps and survived. So when he was in the concentration camps, because of his background and his education, he observed people and, realized being in this dire situation and watching people around him either, live or die. He noticed that people, even if they woke up and just said, I just want to do what I got to do today to get through and make it to tomorrow. People that had some sort of a hope for the next day, a reason to get through that particular day. I want to, be reunited with my family. I just want to get through today. Whatever it was, people that had that hope, had that reason for moving on, did better in the concentration camps. I think this quote really sums it up. People with purpose face the worst crises and most difficult change with a sense of choice. And he also has this great quote, says, when we are no longer able to change our situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. So I thought that was really interesting. And it's a great book if you ever have a minute to read it. It's very short, it's pretty heavy, but it's amazing. It's quite a great story, Man's Search for Meaning. So Dan Buettner, founder of Blue Zones Project, also hit on understanding the relationship between knowing your purpose and how that impacts our physical health and well-being. So this is the Power 9 Lifestyle Principles Pyramid. You may have heard it when we've talked to you about Blue Zones before. But these are all of those commonalities among the centenarians from the 5 original Blue Zones. And so I just wanted to note that, understanding your purpose in life helps you to live longer. And actually, this next slide from a Dr. Butler, who did some research alongside Dan Buettner, found that people who could clearly articulate their sense of purpose lived up to 7 years longer. And when you think about that for a minute, Richard Leider, again, who wrote The Power of Purpose, we were able to attend a couple of his webinars that he did lately, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. And he did this webinar about purpose in challenging times. And he basically said, people with a sense of purpose are more resilient. They understand the bigger picture. Does that mean they don't experience stress? No, but they have like this better coping mechanism. That's really important to your physical health, obviously, because we know when we're stressed, we have a higher level of cortisol in our body, causes inflammation, and inflammation is associated with almost every age-related disease. And so there really is something to understanding your life's purpose. MetLife, the insurance company, actually did some research too on the subject of purpose. And they asked people, what would you say is the good life? What is it that makes up the good life? And they kind of narrowed it down. Being MetLife, they had everything start with the letter M. So they said money, and not necessarily like, oh, I'm a millionaire, but having money where you're not stressed about paying the bills. Okay, so the good life would be having financial stability. They also said medicine, and not medicine like you're sick, but health, really. It's having your health. So to have the good life, you have your physical health so that you can do the things that you want to do. And then finally, they said it was meaning, having meaning in your life. So having that sense of purpose makes people feel better. They tend to be happier. Okay, so Richard Leider actually developed this what we call the life spiral. And he talks about this a lot in his TED Talks, if you ever watch any of those. And this is how he describes really life from birth to death. So if you were to go at the bottom where the circles are tighter and put what year you were born, and then you go up to the top and maybe you say, I'm probably going to live to 84 because my parents are older and they're pretty in good health, and I'm just going to plug in a number. And then you can kind of see where you are on that life spiral. And what he's saying is every circle, is that an evolution? What is that word I want to say?
Revolution.
Revolution, thank you. Is actually all 5 of these life stages. So when we're younger, we move through those life stages faster. We can think about a young child having a tantrum. I mean, they kind of move through these 5 places really quick and can get back to, back to their plateau. Whereas as we age, it takes us longer to process and move through these phases. But his whole point behind this life spiral is, first of all, let's walk through these phases so we can understand what he's trying to tell us. But basically, it starts with a plateau. So when we think even about that word plateau, straight line, kind of everything's going well, life's good, no big complaints, but something happens and kind of throws us off of that plateau. That would be a triggering event. Can you tell me what you think a triggering event might be?
Could it be a positive or negative thing?
Yes, it can be positive or negative. So it could be something like birth of a child, death of a loved one, marriage, divorce, a move, a new job, right? So you're moving along, things are good. But also I want to mention that he says people can stay on their plateau for too long. And he describes it as inner kill. You kind of stay in a place where you're just comfortable, but you're no longer challenging yourself. You kind of get into a rut. Life becomes this mundane chore, and that's not healthy either. So what happens usually is you have a triggering event that knocks you off of your little comfortable place. The triggering event can be positive or negative, and that throws you into something called limbo. And limbo is when you really start to kind of, you question yourself. You question, you take not take stock, that's the next one, but you kind of evaluate where you are in life. Okay, what are my options? What might I do next? So it's kind of that in between time. And it can be stressful when you're in limbo because you don't know what's coming next. I mean, I kind of feel like the pandemic, we've been in limbo for a while, right? We were all moving along just fine. Then COVID hit, knocked everybody off into limbo, and everybody's like, okay, I don't know. What do we do? Can we plan for tomorrow? No, we don't even know what's happening tomorrow. It's crazy. But then we move into taking stock, and that's where we're able to really start examining our life, asking ourselves questions. Okay, so I lost my job. I had that kind of freak out moment. Now I know I got to build up my resume. I got to call some folks and get some good referrals. I got to do that. You start to take steps to move yourself to the next place. And then you take charge and you start making those changes. So again, if the example was you lost your job, now you're starting to get out there, put yourself out there, interview, etc. So his whole point again to this life spiral is once we understand where we are in life, so just take a second and think about your own life, where you might be on this life spiral. When you understand what's coming next, he says, then it helps you to get through it because all right, I've done this before. I've been through these 5 stages. I've done this my entire life. So I'm not going to be thrown when something like a triggering event happens, because I know that I'm going to be able to sort it out. I'm going to just naturally go through this process of going through limbo. Then I'm going to take stock and I'm going to take charge. So again, it's just that, showing people that once we kind of understand the big picture, we can be more resilient, especially in challenging times. So, think about where you might be, maybe what your last trigger was, where you are now, what you've learned from it. We won't spend a lot of time here, but all right. So here is where we get into the fun stuff. So this is where we start to understand what makes up purpose. And you can see here, it's your gifts plus your passions and values really is what your own purpose is all about. So let's start with what our gifts are. So gifts are those things that you're naturally just good at. You lose track of time when you're doing this particular task. You don't even remember learning it. It's just something that comes naturally to you. So definitely it's one of your strengths, and they're meant to be given away. That's why they're called gifts. And most often, if you look across your life, you might see, oh gosh, I'm always doing that for other people, or people come to me and ask me for this because it's just one of my strengths. It's what I'm good at. So it's just that natural connection. When we talk about passion, we think about the things that you care very deeply about. It's something that compels you to want to take action. And then values are really those core beliefs that you feel that you have to act out on. They're not ideals, they're things that are actually actionable. So when we put those all together, then that's what creates your sense of purpose. It's a great quote in here by Oliver Wendell Holmes, and he said, "Most people go to their graves with their music still inside them." I mean, when you think about that, and we think about purpose, people going to their grave with their music still inside them, it means they have that gift and they never acted on it. They never exposed it. They never shared it. I mean, have you ever thought about anyone in your life that might have a gift and isn't using it to its fullest capacity? I mean, you may have seen students across, your career who were really strong in a particular area, but maybe they weren't courageous enough to share that for whatever reason. But it's a shame when we're at the end of our life and we realize there was something that we could have been sharing and we didn't. So we're glad you're here tonight to discover your own purpose. All right, so this calling card activity is really what's going to help us to develop that draft purpose statement. So if we were in person, we would actually be using something that looks like a deck of cards. So this is just going to be a little bit different. But we're going to look at 52 what we call doing statements. So here they are in front of us, 52 doing statements. And what I want you to do is just take a minute. Don't spend a lot of time. Kind of just go with your gut, interpret it the way that you personally will interpret it. Don't try to think it through too much. But ask yourself when you read each one of these statements, is this something that I love to do? Okay. If it is, keep it on the list. If it's not, scratch it off. So what we're trying to do is whittle this list down. We want to eventually get it to 5. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes. Just do your best and try to whittle that list down. I mean, you don't have to have exactly 5. If you get it down to 7, that's a good start. I'll give you a couple minutes. How's it going, ladies? Good.
I had way too many.
So just go back to them and just ask yourself, is this something I absolutely love to do? You know, think about, have you lost track of time doing that, whatever it is? Once you have it kind of narrowed down, and if it's not 5, it could be 7, 8, whatever, you can kind of keep thinking on it. But I really want you to identify one that you would say, that's my top gift. That number one thing, you could take them all else away, and this is the one that really, really describes who I am. This is the thing that I love the most. All right, I'm going to move to the next slide, but don't panic because all the statements are still on there. So basically, we're getting into a place now. They're kind of color coded. So if you still need to work on this, keep working, but I'm going to keep talking, because now what they've done is they've taken the 52 doing words. They're still in the same order, but they've broken them out into groups by what they refer to as a particular environment. And that really is how you express the gift. So if you had any of those gifts in the, what color is that? I don't know. Orangish, coral, numbers 1 through 9. They're investigative. So if you are an investigative person, then obviously you like deep observation. You investigate things. You're extremely curious. You like to analyze things. You're a problem solver. You had a motto, it would be, let's figure this out. So if you had any of those gifts in that area, that might describe how you like to work. That next grouping in the green, 10 through 18, that's the enterprising environment. And that is really people that are into those entrepreneurial startups, okay? They love starting a new project. They like a new organization. They want to focus on actions that produce results. That next category, the purple, that's our artistic environment. People that prefer an artistic environment are basically our creative thinkers. They like less of a structure, so they just kind of like that creative space. They like to come up with their own original ideas, and they're kind of our dreamers. And the blue, 28 to 39, that's our social environment. These are people that like kind of that team atmosphere. They like to work as a group. They like it when everybody pitches in and participates. They're friendly, they're outgoing. They like to help people and solve people problems. Next, the orange, 40 to 45. Those are the structured people. They are more conventional, very well organized. They like to carry out tasks. They're very conscientious and dependable. And finally, realistic is that bottom group, green. And these are people that like structure and order. And they like to work with objects and tools, and they like to work with their hands, and they like opportunities to experience their work through their different senses. They're also the people that are like, let's roll up our sleeves and get it done. So, knowing where your gifts were, are you all over the place as far as environments? Do you have a couple things in the same environment? I actually had a lady at my last purpose workshop that had all 5 of hers were in one area, investigative. You guys are all kind of spread out? Yeah.
I'm spread out, but I would say I'm definitely grouped together, a lot of them in the social.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yep. That would be me, the social, and I think it was enterprising. Yeah. So that's interesting. And do you feel like, hey, that kind of suits me? That fits. I see where that kind of describes who I am. All right, well, here's what we're going to do next. We're actually going to use this little plug and play template right here. This is really just a way to help you get it onto paper. So when we think about our purpose statement, we're thinking about our gifts and what it is that we're passionate about and how we're going to use those gifts in service to others. So this really kind of just shows you, with my gifts of, and you drop in those things that you identified. I am here to, that's where you say your number one gift. I am here to, whatever that one was. This is where you have to do a little thinking and reflection for the benefit of blank. That's where you might have to think, okay, well, how am I going to use these gifts to help other people? So I would just write this down. You can finish it off as homework or whatever. But this just kind of gets you into the framework of putting it on paper. And I hope you guys know, that there's really something to putting it onto paper. When we write something down, it makes it a little more of a concrete idea that we can wrap our mind around. And it also allows us to reflect upon it. Richard Leiter, we just went to one of his webinars last week, and he said, he really encourages people to develop a purpose practice. And he said, what he does every day, he has 2 words on a sticky, grow and give. And he said, I look at it every morning and I think, how can I grow today? And how can I give? What can I do to help somebody else? Using my purpose, using my gifts, how can I grow and how can I give? I kind of skipped over this slide about a sounding board. I just want to touch on this real quick because purpose is really not a one and done kind of a thing. Purpose is really ongoing, and it should not be confused with a goal, because your goal, we have short-term goals, we have long-term goals, but the journey of life is really more about purpose. So as we move through life, our purpose might change. You may come back and take a purpose workshop in a year and find a couple different gifts, but most likely you're going to have some that are just you're drawn to that will remain consistent. But because of, life changes, you may have some little tweaks. So we really want this workshop to be an opportunity for you to start a conversation about purpose. And so we encourage people to create kind of this sounding board. That's totally up to you, but it's really just share this with somebody, talk to them. If you've got the slide, you could print it off, and you could have your spouse, your partner, a friend, a coworker, say, go through this list. I want you to circle things that you think describe me. don't even have them do it on themselves yet. Just see what they think about you and then see if you kind of match up. It would be interesting to have some feedback from somebody that knows you or works with you, knows you well. And that just kind of will challenge you to see how you're using your gifts in the workplace. So, not everybody can take their purpose and turn it into a career. But what Richard Leider says is that there are ways to express your gifts in your career. So, for example, I don't know of any little girl that says, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to be a marketer. I'm going to be a marketer. I'm going to be a communicator, but that's my field. But I like to meet people. I like to connect with people. I like to build relationships. And so that's what I can do in the framework of my career. That's what I can do at work. So my husband, on the other hand, his passion is photography. He was able to make that a career. He's a photographer, but not everybody can do that. So when Richard Leider was traveling and going to various presentations that he was giving, he was in a cab and he was talking to the cab driver and he said, do you enjoy driving a cab? And the guy said, no, this is literally just what I do to pay the bills. And he's like, oh, well, what gets you fired up? What are you excited about? He said, I love working with kids. I love coaching kids. And he said, if I'm not working, that's what I'm doing. I have some kids at home that are soccer players. And he said, I commit all my time to my community and I'm a coach, blah, blah, blah. So, think about that. You may not be showing up to work thinking that you have opportunities to express those gifts. But Richard actually challenges us and he says, think about that and this is his challenge to people. He says, give 25% more of yourself and see what happens. Think of ways that you can express those gifts, those things that you circled that you thought, hey, those are things that I really love to do. Are there ways that you can express that in your job? And he says that only because he understands that when we feel like we're making a difference, when we feel like what we do matters, it impacts our health. It makes us feel better. We have less stress, better well-being, on and on. Let's move on. So hopefully you have somewhat of a draft that you can start to tweak over time. Homework. All right. You didn't know you were going to have homework, did you? You're really not going to have homework. Really, what we just want to say is there is a lot of information out there on purpose. And if you're into YouTube, I like to watch TED Talks every now and then. Google Richard Leider. I mean, he has some great talks and some are really short, might be just something that gets you pumped up. Others, are a little bit longer, but it's really an interesting topic. And, we just encourage you to don't let the workshop be just the one and done. Pursue kind of this learning about purpose and how it impacts your health and well-being, and how you can kind of heighten your own sense of purpose. That is it, ladies. We are at the final slide for tonight. Does anybody want to share maybe one of those gifts? What was your number one gift that you thought, okay, that's the one that really, really describes me, or that I'm really jazzed about? Erica, you want to share one?
Sure. Yeah. Getting to the heart of matters. I like that one. And I think by putting the other four like before it,
yeah,
I see how all four of those kind of work together. Because I was across the board. I had one in each. One of my 5 was in each except structured. Even
that's interesting. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Those people make great team players because they kind of they are, they cover the whole gamut. So it's like, oh, that's a good person we want on our team because you're flexible, really. Missy, what about you?
I struggled getting down to even 5. I had probably 10, but I had a lot of clusters
Right.
I said my number one was empower. In that I had with my gifts of bringing joy, building relationships, making connections, and participation, I am here to empower for the benefit of my students.
That's excellent.
I would
Yes.
really, honestly, I would rather do career counseling with them than actually the teaching part, because I feel like that is really where more my passion is, to help them find a path that's realistic and sustainable that they're passionate about.
There you go. And that's the key. And we've talked about wanting to do this with students, and a lot of Blue Zone communities will do like juniors and seniors, and they'll have them do the workshop, and it just helps them to explore, okay, so here's what I'm good at. Now, how can I apply that to a job or to a career path? So yeah, that's great. That's awesome. All right, ladies. Thank you for being
Thank
here
you,
tonight.
Shanna.
Really appreciate it. And I
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
real quick link, do it tomorrow by the end of the week. Quick survey, it just helps us to improve the process. So appreciate your time, and everybody have a good night.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that is geared towards teens that you could do? Maybe I could do it with my students, or maybe I could have you Zoom in and do a purpose workshop with my students.
Yeah, it really is the same curriculum that we would use with students. We might tweak some of the wording, but absolutely, we would love to do that.
Okay.
And I know they've talked about that at the district. I mean, Jennifer, I know Dan Dom said, hey, maybe we'll do it this spring. So if you want to put the bug in his ear and say, hey, I really like that idea, let's do this for our students, we'd be happy to do it.
I think it's needed.
Yeah. Absolutely. We did this for some Erie County employees, and I feel like one of them was from the county, something with education, and she was like, our students need this. Our students need to do this. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of value in just helping them to start to see what they gravitate towards, and those types of things that they feel, I'm comfortable with that, I'm good at that, I enjoy that. Okay, now how can we take those things and apply them to furthering your education or a job skill that would make sense? Because we want people to do something that they enjoy, right?
Right.
I mean, I keep telling my son, he is a senior at Gannon in environmental science, and I feel like he senses a little pressure because his sister was on the PA track, and she knows, when she got her degree, she knew what she was going to do. She's going to be a PA. He's like, I have no clue what I'm going to be. And I said, well, that can be a good thing. It's very broad. You've got a lot of opportunity, but it's almost like overwhelming to him.
Yeah.
And I said, at the end of the day, buddy, I just want you to be happy. Do something that makes you happy. And, try to make some money so you can move out and have your own life. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, well, we appreciate it, ladies. I thank you for your time. And yes,
Thank
Missy, we would love to come in and do this for the students. So
Okay.
we'll talk about it.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night, ladies. Thank you.
Hey, you too. Thank you. See you later, Missy.
Bye, Erica.